Golden dust drifted across the dying stretch of a Texas desert road, turning the world into a blur of amber and heat. The air hummed like an old wire fence in the wind, and the scent of mesquite hung thick as breath. A lone rider moved slow across the horizon, Elias Boone, a rancher whose silence weighed heavier than his saddle. His coat was sun-bleached, his hat frayed, his eyes tired but steady, carrying that kind of hurt only time could give a man. He wasn't looking for company. Then, out there in the trembling distance, he saw a movement. A small, thin figure leading a horse through the haze. The boy was barefoot, the horse limping. Each step raised a puff of dust that vanished before the next. Elias slowed, squinting against the glare until the shapes grew clearer. A boy of maybe 14. Dirt-caked face, lips cracked from thirst. Clutching a frayed rope tied to a bay mare whose right leg dragged through the sand. Elias dismounted, boots crunching against the grit. "You lost, son?" he asked, voice low, rough as gravel. The boy straightened his shoulders, though his body trembled. "Ain't lost," he muttered. "She just needs rest." His voice cracked on the word she. Elias looked at the mare's leg, blood, dried and dark around the fetlock. He unscrewed his canteen and offered it out. The boy hesitated, suspicion sharp in his eyes. Pride can kill quicker than hunger out here. Elias crouched and poured water into his palm, holding it near the mare's mouth. The horse leaned forward, tongue lapping slow and weak. The boy watched, jaw tight, then reached out, guiding the animal's head gently. Finally, when the mare lifted her eyes again, the boy took a sip from the canteen himself. No words followed. Just a quiet understanding between two souls too used to going without kindness. The sun dipped low. They found shelter under a sparse mesquite. Elias built a fire from dry twigs and brush. The light flickered over their faces, turning the desert gold and copper. The mare stood tethered nearby, dozing. The boy sat across the fire, his knees drawn to his chest, hat pulled low. "What's your name?" Elias asked after a long silence. "Finn," the boy said, still staring into the flames. "Finn Avery." Elias nodded. "You far from home, Finn Avery?" The boy's lips pressed thin. "Ain't got one." The words hung heavy in the night air. The wind whistled low through the branches, carrying the faint smell of rain. Bit by bit, Finn spoke. His story came out in fragments. How he'd worked at a ranch called Dry River, how the foreman had taken his mother's locket, how he'd left in the dark to get it back. He'd been walking for 3 days. Elias didn't press for more. He just listened, hands steady, eyes fixed on the fire. That, more than words, was mercy. When Finn finally slept, Elias sat awake, turning a stick in the embers. He thought of his own boyhood, the war that took his brother, the father who taught him silence was safer than softness. He realized he hadn't spoken this many words to another soul in months. The desert sighed around them. The mare shifted in her sleep. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Before dawn, the wind began to rise. A storm swept across the open plains, dust twisting into the air like smoke. The fire went out in a breath. Lightning flared, blue-white against the black sky, and the horse reared, panicked. Finn woke with a shout, clutching for the reins. Elias caught him before the storm swallowed them both. He threw his coat around the boy and pulled him close under the tarp tied between the saddles. Rain came sideways, sharp as nails. The ground turned to mud, and thunder cracked across the sky like the earth itself was breaking. Through the roar, Elias could hear the boy's muffled sobs. "Mama," Finn whispered, voice trembling. Elias didn't speak. He just held him closer, shielding him as best he could. The lightning flashed again, lighting their faces, the man's jaw tight, the boy's cheek pressed against his chest. In that fleeting glow, Elias felt something ache and heal at the same time. When dawn came, the storm was gone. The world smelled of wet dust and new life. The sky glowed pale pink, and puddles shimmered like scattered glass. Elias rose stiffly, checking the mare's leg. The wound had stopped bleeding. Finn stirred beside the fire pit, blinking against the light. For the first time, his face wasn't guarded, just young, open, and quiet. Elias poured the last of the coffee grounds into the pot, the scent rich and comforting. Finn sat up slowly, watching him. The mare grazed near a patch of green sprouting from the damp soil. After a long silence, Elias said, You'll come with me to town. There's a blacksmith there who'll fix that leg proper." Finn hesitated, searching his face for pity. There was none, only calm certainty. He nodded once. They packed the gear in silence. The desert, clean after the storm, stretched endless around them. The sky had that fragile blue that only comes after rain. Elias mounted his horse, then offered a hand to Finn. The boy took it, and for a moment their shadows joined across the ground, two wanderers moving toward a horizon that felt, for once, like hope. They rode slow, the injured mare trailing behind. Wind brushed through the sage, whispering across the empty land. Neither spoke, but something in the space between them said enough. Out here, in the hush after the storm, words weren't needed. Only the steady rhythm of hooves, the promise of daylight, and the quiet knowing that somehow, against all odds, neither of them was alone anymore. By midday, the roofs of Rio Verde shimmered in the heat, their tin edges bright as mirrors against the horizon. The road into town was quiet but watchful. Every porch had a pair of eyes waiting to see who came riding in. Elias Boone rode slow, reins loose, the boy behind him and the injured mare limping faithfully beside. Whispers started before they even dismounted. "That Boone fella's brought home a stray," someone muttered from the saloon steps. "Looks half-starved. Another mouth to feed." The sound of judgment was a language the town spoke fluently. Elias ignored them. He led the mare down to the blacksmith shop on the edge of town, where the air smelled of smoke and steel. Behind the anvil stood May Callahan, her hair tied up in a red kerchief, sleeves rolled, hammer in hand. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him. It had been years since they last spoke, but she didn't say a word. She just motioned for the horse to be brought inside. Finn clung close, uncertain. May's gaze softened when she noticed his bare feet and cracked hands. "We'll take care of her," she said gently, nodding toward the mare. Elias set his hat down. "She'll need a new shoe and rest." May glanced at him, long enough to remember everything they'd never said. Once, she'd waited for him to come home from the frontier, to build the life they'd dreamed of. He never did. He'd returned years too late, hollowed by loss. Now he stood before her again, carrying a wounded horse and a lost boy, as if trying to mend something in the world he couldn't mend inside himself, while May worked. Finn hovered nearby, handing tools when she asked. She showed him how to calm a nervous horse with a steady voice and a touch to the neck. The boy learned quick, his fingers gentle. Watching them, Elias felt a quiet warmth spread in his chest, a feeling he'd forgotten the name of by the time the sun dipped behind the ridge. The mare was bandaged and resting. May wiped sweat from her brow and smiled faintly. "She'll live," she said. "You both could use a rest, too." Elias nodded his thanks. Just as he turned to leave, a horse's hooves thundered into town. The sheriff, Dale Mercer, dismounted in front of the shop, his face stern but not cruel. "Boone," he called out. "That boy, where'd you find him?" Elias stood still. "Out on the plains, leading a hurt mare." The sheriff frowned. "Dry River Ranch sent word. One of their hands went missing, and they're saying he stole a locket and a horse. You know anything about that?" Finn's eyes went wide. He stepped back until he hit the wall. "That's mine," he stammered. "The locket, it's my ma's." Elias took a quiet step forward, placing himself between the boy and the sheriff. "He stole nothing," he said simply. Dale sighed, rubbing his jaw. "Maybe so, but I can't just take your word for it, Boone. They'll come looking. You got till morning to sort this out." When the sheriff rode away, the weight of the town's eyes pressed in again. May met Elias's gaze. "You can't save everyone, Eli," she whispered. He looked past her, out into the cooling dusk. "I'm not saving him," he said. "I'm saving the man he might grow up to be." Before dawn, Elias and Finn saddled up. The town slept behind them, silent except for the wind rattling the signs. The desert stretched before them like a test of faith. They rode for hours, the rising sun painting long shadows across the sand. Elias taught the boy how to read the land, the curve of wind-carved dunes, the way stars shift west before dawn. Finn listened, memorizing each word. In return, he told Elias about his mother, the way she sang hymns at night to chase away fear, how her locket carried her picture inside at a tea midday. They rested by a dry creek bed. Elias handed Finn his old red bandana. "For luck," he said. Finn tied it around his wrist like armor. "You really think they'll believe me?" Elias gave a slow half-smile. Don't matter if they do. Truth's its own kind of proof. By dusk, they reached the weather-beaten fences of Dry River Ranch. The place looked mean, built more for control than cattle. A man stood waiting by the corral, a tall brute with a scar cutting through his cheek and a pistol heavy at his hip. Harlan Pike, the foreman. Well, I'll be damned, Pike drawled. The little thief found himself a savior. Finn stepped forward, shaking. That's my ma's locket you got. Pike smirked, pulling a tarnished silver locket from his pocket. Found it after you ran off. No proof it's yours, boy. Elias dismounted, slow and calm, dust swirling around his boots. Then maybe you'll hand it to me, he said. Pike sneered. Or what, Boone? You gonna shoot me over some runaway and a trinket? Elias's hand didn't flinch. The sound of the hammer cocking was soft but final. In one swift motion, he drew and fired, not at Pike, but an inch above his head. The bullet punched through the tin roof behind him, ringing like a church bell. The foreman froze. Sweat slicked his brow. The locket slipped from his hand into the dirt. Elias holstered his gun, eyes steady. That'll do. Finn bent, picked up the locket, and clutched it tight. His lip trembled, but he stood straighter now. They turned and left without another word. The sun was bleeding low across the sky as they rode away, painting everything gold and red. Finn rode beside Elias, the locket pressed to his chest, the mare walking better beneath him. For the first time, he didn't look like a boy running from something. He looked like one heading somewhere. When they returned to Rio Verde, May was waiting outside the forge. She didn't ask questions, just smiled, a soft, knowing smile, and brushed a hand over the mare's neck. Elias watched her, something loosening in his chest. The boy helped her carry water to the trough, talking quietly about the ride home. The sound of his laughter, a small, fragile thing, filled the evening air. Weeks passed. The desert turned greener with the late rains. Finn worked at the forge, learning from May, while Elias mended fences and found peace in the quiet rhythm of the day's point one evening. As the sun melted into the hills, Elias sat on the porch, boots resting on the rail. The mare grazed nearby, her leg healed. Finn joined him, holding the locket. What was your mother like? Elias asked. Finn smiled faintly. Strong. She didn't give up easy. Elias nodded, eyes on the horizon. Then she's still out there. Maybe not in the way you think, but she's still out there. They sat in silence, the kind that doesn't need words. The air smelled of sage and rain. Finally, Elias spoke again, voice soft as the wind. Sometimes the lost don't need to be found. They just need someone to walk beside them till they remember where home is. The boy looked up at him, then toward the open land. Out beyond the fences, the sky stretched forever, painted in gold and lavender. When the camera pulls back, they're still sitting there, man and boy, side by side in the fading light. Their shadows long across the porch. The desert hums its old song again, of dust and mercy, of loss and return, and somewhere in the quiet between their breaths, something holy takes root, the simple, saving kind of love that doesn't need a name.